We've got just the story for you this morning. The story of Elijah on Mount Carmel, found in 1 Kings chapter 18. And I'd like to invite you to turn there as we read it together. It is on page 553 of your pew Bibles, 1 Kings 18. We will begin reading in verse 16. You will remember that it hasn't rained and it's very, very dry there. So Obadiah went to meet Ahab and told him. And Ahab went to meet Elijah. When he saw Elijah, he said to him, "Is that you, you troubler of Israel?" "I've not made trouble for Israel," Elijah replied, "but you and your father's family have. You have abandoned the Lord's commands and have followed the Baals. Now summon the people from all over Israel to meet me on Mount Carmel, and bring the 450 prophets of Baal and the 400 prophets of Asherah who eat at Jezebel's table." So Ahab sent word throughout all of Israel and assembled the prophets on Mount Carmel. Elijah went before the people and said, "How long will you waver between two opinions? If the Lord is God, follow him. But if Baal is God, follow him." But the people said nothing. Then Elijah said to them, "I am the only one of the Lord's prophets left, but Baal has 450 prophets. Get 2 bulls for us. Let Baal's prophets choose one of them for themselves, and let them cut it to pieces and put it on the wood, but not set fire to it. I will prepare the other bull and put it on the wood, but not set fire to it. Then you call on the name of your God, and I will call on the name of the Lord, the God who answers by fire. He is God." Then all the people said, "What you say is good." Elijah said to the prophets of Baal, "Choose one of the bulls and prepare it first, since there are so many of you. Call on the name of your God, but do not light the fire." So they took the bull given them and prepared it. Then they called on the name of Baal from morning till noon. "Baal, answer us," they shouted. But there was no response. No one answered. And they danced around the altar they had made. At noon, Elijah began to taunt them, saying, "Shout louder. Surely he is a god. Perhaps he is deep in thought or busy or traveling. Maybe he's sleeping and must be awakened." So they shouted louder and slashed themselves with swords and spears, as was their custom, until their blood flowed. Midday passed, and they continued their frantic prophesying until time for the evening sacrifice, but there was no response. No one answered. No one paid attention. Then Elijah said to the people, "Come here to me." They came to him. And he repaired the altar of the Lord which had been torn down. Elijah took 12 stones, one for each of the tribes descended from Jacob, to whom the word of the Lord had come, saying, "Your name shall be Israel." With the stones he built an altar in the name of the Lord, and he dug a trench around it large enough to hold 2 seahs of seed. He arranged the wood, cut the bull into pieces, and laid it on the wood. Then he said to them, "Fill 4 large jars with water and pour it on the offering and on the wood." "Do it again," he said. They did it again. "Do it a 3rd time," he ordered, and they did it a 3rd time. The water ran down around the altar and even filled the trench. At the time of the sacrifice, the prophet Elijah stepped forward and prayed, "Lord, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, let it be known today that you are God in Israel, that I am your servant and have done all these things at your command. Answer me, Lord, answer me, so these people will know that you, Lord, are God, and that you are turning their hearts back again." Then the fire of the Lord fell and burned up the sacrifice, the wood, the stones, the soil, and also licked up the water in the trench. When all the people saw this, they fell prostrate and cried, "The Lord, he is God! The Lord, he is God!" Then Elijah commanded them, "Seize the prophets of Baal. Don't let anyone get away." They seized them, and Elijah had them brought down to Kishon Valley and slaughtered there. And Elijah said to Ahab, "Go, eat and drink, for there is the sound of a heavy rain." So Ahab went off to eat and drink, but Elijah climbed to the top of Carmel, bent to the ground, and put his face between his knees. "Go and look toward the sea," he told his servant, and he went up and looked. "There's nothing there," he said. 7 times Elijah said, "Go back." The 7th time the servant reported, a cloud as small as a man's hand is rising from the sea." So Elijah said, "Go and tell Ahab, hitch up your chariot and go down before the rain stops you." Meanwhile, the sky grew black with clouds. The wind rose. A heavy rain started falling, and Ahab rode off to Jezreel. The power of the Lord came on Elijah, and tucking his cloak into his belt, he ran ahead of Ahab all the way to Jezreel. This is the word of the Lord. A pixel is a minute area of illumination, one of many which can be used to compose an image on a display screen, like a phone or a tablet or a computer. 30% of the traffic on the internet is made up of pixels arranged in a certain way. I think you're starting to know what I'm talking about. 70% of men between the ages of 18 and 30 look at these particular arrangements of pixels every month. 60 to 65% look several times every week. 30% of women look at these arrangements of pixels on display screens as well and are also fascinated by them. I'm talking, of course, about pornography, but to even call it pornography is, in a sense, to give it a reality that it doesn't deserve to have. They're tiny little dots of light on a display screen. You can't touch it. You can't have a relationship with it. You can't marry it or have children with it. It's fake. It's not real. It's imaginary. I have rolling around at the bottom of my pocket some change, and the smallest coin I have is a penny. A penny is a little round disc. You're familiar with it, made once upon a time of copper, now made 97.5% of zinc and covered with 2.5% of copper. And it's worth 1/100th of a dollar, and it's really not so much pennies that have me thinking this morning as it is currency in general. Money. Why is it important? Why is it valuable? Think of a $5 bill. Think of a $50 bill. Why is the 50 worth 10 times what the $5 bill is worth? Is it 10 times bigger? Is it 10 times prettier? Does it have 10 times more paper or more ink? No. It's worth 10 times more than the 5 because we have agreed to imagine that it is worth 10 times more than a 5. It's imaginary. And if you don't believe me, try being stranded on a desert island out in the ocean somewhere and surviving with a big pallet load of money. It won't get you anywhere unless there's someone with whom you can pretend that it's worth something. And we've seen whole economies disintegrate when people decide to stop believing the lie, the imaginary tale, that currency has value. A lot of us will spend our lives after some kind of position of power or prestige we climb our respective ladders. It starts already in school with kids who want to impress their teachers, who want to impress their peers. They work hard, they do what's right, and they sense that they are ascending and becoming more important and more powerful. And it happens throughout our lives, whatever your career may be, whether it's academia or law or medicine or business or education. They all have ladders where we climb and we enjoy the fruits of our success. And we look behind us and we see those diplomas, we see those experiences, we have that resume, we think we're on solid ground, and bam, a scandal of some sort, a change in the economy. Something happens and all of a sudden everything that we have climbed up to achieve success with, power, prestige, it's gone. It was imaginary. It was fake. It wasn't real. We've joined the prophet Elijah at Mount Carmel. For how many was this one of your favorite Bible stories ever? I mean, it just so exciting. So much action, so much drama, so much rich detail. The idea of a prophet of God who can call down fire without breaking a sweat. I mean, who's not going to love that? And we have these incredible characters. Elijah at the height of his power. Ahab, who winds up looking like something of a weakling. All these prophets of Baal who are dancing around in this frenzy, harming themselves in order to call on the power of their worldview to save them, to send fire, to confirm his existence. And along with all of that, there are people that I never really noticed before. They're mentioned early in the passage, and there's some dialogue as the passage goes on. They're the Israelites. I mean, the prophets of Baal were enough to fill this place all by themselves. But Elijah called for all Israel to assemble as well. Hundreds, perhaps thousands of spectators watching what was going on here in this story. And so we sit back with the spectators and we root for Elijah as he taunts these prophets of Baal, dancing around, making fools of themselves. Can you imagine? Can it be real? It's too funny to believe. His late night computer viewing habits have pretty well ended their sex life. As he gets up late at night, she pretends to be asleep, but she has a pretty good sense of where he's going and what's going on. And he heads to look at these pixels and to enter into an imaginary and fantasy world. And as he is caught up in this, his marriage is bleeding out on the floor. A couple of doors down, the house is dark, and it's dark not because everyone there is asleep. It's dark because its single occupant, a young woman, is still at work again. And everyone who knows her likes her. She is incredibly gifted and amazingly ambitious. No one has rocketed through the ranks of her place of employment like she has. She just started another degree program not long ago. But there's not a lot of time in her life for anything, for anyone. And as much as her colleagues respect and admire her, they fear that her life might be just a little empty. You go down the street and around the corner, and there's another house with a light that's always on at this time of night. It's the little home office, and there's a guy in there. He's got a wife and kids, and he's in front of the computer as well. But his thing is well, he's become a day trader. And he stays up late at night to look at the market analysis of everything that has happened during the day. And so there he is all day long. He's got his phone under his desk at work, and he's checking to see what his favorites are doing. He's looking at his accounts to see. And he lives in this dream of being able to score enough money in a day to walk away from it all. And even as he dreams the dream, people can see that his life is slipping away. You know, worshiping Baal was pretty much the same as worshiping any other idol. There was sex, there was money, and there was power. If you read up on Baal worship, you'll find that there were shrine prostitutes, and that a part of the religious act included that as well. It was popular among the people, and it created this notion of a god of fertility, a god of production, with whom you could somehow enter into this reality. As the god of fertility, he was also the god of prosperity. Back then they didn't have day traders or stock markets. What they had was agriculture, crops and livestock. And by serving Baal, by worshiping Baal, you could enhance your agricultural portfolio. Baal would give you these successful seasons of crops and animals. And with a proponent as strong as Jezebel, this second part of the royal couple, well, if you wanted power, you had to run in the right crowds, and nothing curried favor with Jezebel like worshiping Baal. So little by little, an imaginary story of what life consists of is created and shared. It happened then, and I think you've seen and understand that it happens as well now. Before you know it, people are spending their lives dancing and bleeding around imaginary things, fake things, things that don't really exist. The story is all about exposing those imaginary things. God uses Elijah in this instance to expose the fake and imaginary gods his people had left him for. We can laugh as we read the story at these prophets of Baal as Elijah taunts them and makes fun of them. But I trust we've seen that a lot of our lives involve dancing around things that aren't real, crying out to things that can't help us, focusing our attention and our imagination on what the culture has told us is true, but what we sense deep down is a fraud and a fake. In this story, Elijah dedicates himself to exposing what is fake and to revealing what is true. I mean, it's one thing to expose what's fake, right? I mean, if we all agree that all our gods are fake, well, then we can live together in harmony. We all know they're figments of our imagination. But that's not what Elijah is about. There is one that is true, while all the rest of them are fake. And Elijah takes Israel on this journey from an imaginary and fake world back to reality, back to stuff that's real. And he begins at the torn down altar of Yahweh. God's been here on Mount Carmel. God has history with this place. And he gets 12 stones. And he has those stones arranged as an altar. And as those stones are put in place, Israel's out there. They're watching. They remember the story of a God who called Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, who changed Jacob's name to Israel, who gave him 12 sons. They remember the stories of their history. They know that it's real. And so as those stones are arranged, all the history of Israel, the unified kingdom under King David, it's all remembered. And there are 4 jars. 4 jars that Elijah has filled with water and poured over the 12 stones 3 times. That's 12 jars of water over 12 stones. Showers of blessing. A land flowing with milk and honey. Again, Elijah is bringing Israel back to her reality, to what God promised them and to what God delivered for them when they entered into the promised land, when they took God at his word and obeyed him and followed him. Verse 36. At the time of the sacrifice, the prophet Elijah stepped forward and prayed, Lord, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, let it be known today that you are God in Israel and that I am your servant and have done all these things at your command. Answer me, Lord, so that these people will know that you, Lord, are God, that you are turning their hearts back again. Then the fire of the Lord fell and burned up the sacrifice, the wood, the stones, the soil, and also licked up the water in the trench. When all the people saw this, they fell prostrate and cried, the Lord, he is God, the Lord, he is God. Because it's not enough just to expose an imaginary God as fake. You need to demonstrate that there is a real God. You need to demonstrate that there is real power. And so Elijah cries out to God. And I don't know what it was, if it was a bolt of lightning or a ball of fire, but all of a sudden, boom! And everything is ablaze. And it's all gone. I remember in the Dominican Republic once riding as quickly as we could by a riot that was going on a street corner, and there was this huge pile of burning tires, and as we went by, we felt the heat radiate right through the side of the van. And it's that kind of heat that fell, that demonstrated the power of Elijah's God, his reality. And as a result, the prophets of Baal are put to death. They're punished. Ahab is dismissed. At the end of it all, you'd expect to find Elijah doing a little victory dance, wouldn't you? But at the end of the passage, we find him down with his head between his knees. Because the fire is only a small part of the miracle. The real miracle is in the rain. And so he waits and he prays in humility, and he asks his servant to go around the mountain and to look to see if the rain is coming. 7 times he has to send. 7 periods he has to wait. And in the fullness of time, creation is restored. And that servant sees the cloud raising up over the sea and tells Elijah, and the last image in the passage is of Elijah running before the chariot of Ahab as they head to Jezreel. The man of God, the Spirit-filled prophet, the bearer of the word of God, leads and directs Israel's king by God's power. The question of the passage is, how long will you limp along between 2 opinions? I mentioned at the beginning of the sermon that I'd never really thought much of all the Israelites in attendance that day. My imagination was always so captivated by Elijah and by those prophets of Baal. that I didn't think of all the other people there, but there were spectators, hundreds of them, maybe thousands, who knows? And we're among them. As we read the story, the questions of the story have been put to us as well. We're the judge and jury in a certain sense. We're there in the bleachers in verse 21 when Elijah goes before the people and says, "How long will you waver between two opinions? If the Lord is God, follow him. But if Baal is God, follow him." But the people said nothing. Then Elijah proposes this plan of exposure and revelation, and we speak with the rest of them in verse 24. Then all the people said, "What you say is good," when Elijah proposes this plan. And in verse 30 we read, "Then Elijah said to all the people, 'Come here to me.' They came to him. We came to him." And in verse 39, the people are finally ready to speak. When all the people saw this, they fell prostrate and cried, "Yahweh, he is God. Yahweh, he is God." Baal was exposed by the real thing, Yahweh. Baal was proven to be nothing but a fraud, a figment of people's imagination, something that had been built up over time, a shared imagination of lots of people, but there was nothing there. There's something else that is revealed in the course of this story. Obviously, there's the fireworks of the fire from heaven. There's the water park of the rain that is coming. But there's something else here that we don't always notice, and perhaps it's because it's not quite as dramatic. In fact, it's boringly consistent with the rest of the story. The story that begins in Genesis and ends in Revelation. What is revealed in this story is how much God loves his people. As they follow a God that is characterized by all the things we see dancing around this altar of Baal, God doesn't drop fire on all of them. God turns their hearts and their minds by exposing fraud for what it is and giving them yet another opportunity to turn to him. You know, the story goes on, and after a while, God stops sending prophets. They get beat up, they get killed. In the end, he sends his own son, born of a real woman, a real man who lives a real life, no one contests it. He died a real death on a real cross. He was buried in a real grave, and after 3 days he was raised again from the dead. And there were hundreds who witnessed Jesus Christ raised again from the dead. That God who demonstrated there on Mount Carmel that there was nothing he wouldn't do to turn the hearts and the minds of his people back to him, went even further and demonstrated through the love of his Son that even if you're dancing around the pixels on the computer screen, even if you're caught up in an addiction to pornography, even if you are so ambitious that you are wrecking the rest of your life, even if you're so money hungry that nothing else matters, he still loves you. And he wants nothing more than to expose the fakes and the frauds for what they are in our lives, and to give you what he wants you to have. Real sex doesn't have anything to do with pixels on a display screen. It has to do with people who come together in a lifelong relationship, not just a moment of intimacy, but decades of life. And the culmination thereof is when giving and receiving become indistinguishable as they are one. Real prosperity happens not when you have enough pennies in your bank account. It happens when you know that everything is grace and that God has your back. And when you know that what God wants for you is far better than anything you've ever wanted, that's true wealth. And power and prestige happen not when you climb the fastest to the highest ladder. They happen when you follow the arc of Jesus' life, who considered equality with God not something to be grasped, but he emptied himself. And he took on the nature of a servant. And it was then that God, after he died, exalted him. These are real things. This is what life is about. And that's what Elijah is trying to do as he calls down fire from heaven, as he demonstrates who the real God is. Serve Yahweh. Know his real love for you. And live a real life. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for your word. We thank you for this incredible story and for this amazing display of your love for your people. Father, for the covenant faithfulness that we have experienced at so many times and in so many different ways, we give you our thanks and our praise. And we ask that you would continue to help us to spot counterfeits, to call fakes fakes, and to serve what is true and real and good. Thank you, Father, for sending Jesus to help us see. It is in his name that we pray. Amen.